Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Extinction on the GeForce GTX 1060 3GB. For performance monitoring, I'll be using Cam. If you want to download the software, there's a link down in the description. So, Extinction, I'll be doing 1080p, 1440p and 4K. To skip down on those sections of the video, check the description below. So, well, first of all, I'll show you 1080p on the G4560, and you'll notice compared to the Ryzen 3 1200 that there's not a huge difference. On the Ryzen 3, you'll notice less GPU usage drops, but I only noticed that on 1080p since we have the higher frame rates on there. If you're just targeting 60 frames per second, you won't see a difference at all between the G4560 and Ryzen 3 on this game, so keep that in mind. For 1080p maximum settings, we don't have any problems getting over 60 frames per second all the time. Pretty much the same happens at 1440p. By just cranking up everything to the max, we stay over 60 frames per second all the time. Sometimes it can drop below 60 for 1 or 2 seconds. And finally at 4K, I overclocked the GTX 1060 to around 2 GHz on the core clock and another 300 MHz on the memory clock. And I first show you the maximum settings, and I stay over 30 frames per second with that. Not really much of a problem. Sometimes you might see a couple drops below 30, but that's when there's a lot of effects on screen just before respawning. Not really a problem if you ask me. And then I just lower the settings to the minimum to see what frame rate we get, so we get a smoother experience at 4K. But honestly, I will just stay at 1440p, 60 frames per second. With that, the game looks good enough, plus you get a very smooth frame rate compared to 4K. But now I'm going to talk to you about the options menu and my experience testing this game. It has very limited options so far, but at least it has something. So to get the best performance, first lower shadows, then lower foliage, and finally anti-aliasing. Those are the three options that gave me the biggest difference in performance, especially shadows and foliage. I recommend lowering those in groups. On the anti-aliasing option, we have FXAA, TAA and off. Of course, if you turn it off, it gives you the bigger FPS boost. You can also cap the frame rate or uncap it. I kept it uncapped for this video. You can also turn off shadows if you want. The game looks significantly flatter without them, as usual. And on the foliage option, if you put it on low, it gets rid of all the grass on screen, pretty much. Instead of being grass that you can actually see, it just becomes a flat texture on the ground. So keep that in mind. If you want to have any sort of actual grass, keep foliage on medium. And overall, I don't really like motion blur, but on this game it seems to be well done. It didn't bother me like on other games. But yeah, not much else to say about the options menu, unfortunately. But with the game itself, I didn't have much of a problem with the performance. On a 1050 Ti, I can max it out on 1080p and have between 40 and 60 frames per second, pretty much. Usually the drops happen when there's a lot of foliage on screen, glass plus trees plus enemies. So when I'm attacking an enemy, for example, and there's blood splatter all over the place, it's usually when the frame rate suffers the most. Same happens with the biggest enemies in the game, when you're just trying to cut a limb or something like that, and there's a lot of foliage close by, being displayed by the camera. That's usually when the biggest performance hit happens, or when one of those big enemies just destroys a lot of buildings. Those effects are usually the reason for the performance hit, that including the foliage at the same time. Not really a big problem if you ask me, but you can manage it quite well by lowering shadows and foliage a little bit. I wish there was an option to just lower the effects quality. That will help a lot with those drops, but unfortunately there isn't in the options menu, at least not right now. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.